It is Wednesday, May 29th, 2024. This is another edition of Baseball Today presented to you by our friends over at Factor. Quick reminder, by tomorrow night, get your Factor question of the weekend so that we can pick a great one, and they've been so good over the last few weeks, and then use it on Friday's show and make you famous. Speaking of famous people, that is my man, Trevor Plouffe. I am Chris Rose, producer Dan, intern Tommy along for the ride as well. What's up, stud? How you doing?
I'm doing well, C. Rosie. It's always great to see your beautiful face in the morning. We got some good topics today, so I'm excited to get it going. I do have I don't even know what I was going to say. I took Teddy to the this random baseball field yesterday because after his horrendous tournament they had this last weekend, he's been really wanting to practice. And this baseball field was in such bad shape. And I've been realizing lately in Los Angeles, like all these baseball fields like are in bad shape, and I've been racking my brain like on how to fix that. So that's kind of what's been on my mind lately. I don't know why I'm saying that on here, but that's just what's going on.
Well,
how you doing?
I'm good. I imagine that's something that plagues the entire country is that there's, some of these.
What's up with that?
And let's be honest, Teddy's got a pretty good opportunity based on where he lives and who his parents are. He gets great opportunity to play on some wonderful fields that some kids don't ever get a chance to.
He doesn't play in any good fields. That's the thing. Like every single field I go to is just they're horrible, and I don't know why. I guess it's expensive to take care of them, and who's going to flip the bill? I guess.
Well, that's always the case, but it is something to think about. And think about maybe what we can do.
You know what it is? It's these ground squirrels. They keep getting into these fields. I got to get rid of these squirrels.
Okay.
This wildlife is getting out of control, Chris.
All right. Well, this is taking a serious, wicked turn all of a sudden. Now we're talking about varmint and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. Can we just get to a tip of the cap, if you don't mind, please? To the world champion Texas Rangers, who welcomed back an old friend in Jordan Montgomery since a key part of their title run a year ago. Now with the Arizona Diamondbacks, got a hug and his ring last night from Bruce Bochy. Then his former teammate Corey Seager continued to run wild. That is 7 homers in his last 7 games. So he is back on the map. He's got to help these guys because it just hasn't been a great first 2 months for the champs, nor the team that they beat in the Fall Classic either. And maybe later this week we'll talk about the plight of those two teams. But I just love it when guys come back and the fans get to appreciate Jordan Montgomery. He got his 1 minute to shine in the spotlight. He wasn't a member of the Rangers very long. Remember, he came over in a midseason trade, but obviously left an impact that will last really generations for Rangers fans.
Yeah, and what a cool moment for him, like seeing that ring for the first time. He gives the awkward hug to Bochy. Bochy doesn't want to hug you for that long. There's like no doubt about that. So Jordan's like, I'm going to get this in here. And we didn't show him hugging Chris Young. Chris Young is a giant. I keep forgetting how big he is. Then I see him walk on the field. I'm like, dude, how are you able to manipulate your body? Like he's that big, and I faced him many times in my baseball career, and he was my nightmare.
Well, yeah, except that you expected a dude like that to throw a bazillion, and he threw like 90.
Yeah, but the deception was insane on his pitches. Insane. I can't even describe it. Such a strange at bat.
All right, let's get this thing going with a new record holder in Major League Baseball. That's right, the legendary Jeremiah Estrada of your San Diego Padres.
Swing and a miss. Jeremiah Estrada has struck out 13 consecutive hitters in a row.
Yeah, let me repeat that, Don. 13 consecutive hitters. That is a major league record. Why isn't this getting more press?
That's a good question, Chris. I don't really know. I don't really have a good answer to that. Maybe because it's like West Coast. Some of these games are late night. I think a lot of times that happens to West Coast teams and athletes. But it's been awesome to watch. And I went back and watched all the 13 Ks. In a row. And what I liked about it, first of all, he's nasty. Like the fastball splitter combo. He has a slider too, but like he's really leaning on that splitter as well. The arm action's gross. The fastball and everything looks heavy. It's all coming out of the same slot, same arm action. That's why it's so difficult for guys to make up their mind and pick and choose. But what I saw was, first couple of strikeouts are like 2-2, 3-2. And then you start to see this like confidence come out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm the man." And then against the Yankees, he was getting ahead of everybody. It's 1-2, 0-2. Then he gets the Marlins, 0-2, 0-2. Like he is just pumping strikes in there and just getting whiffs. It's really cool to see a guy with that stuff find that attitude, that confidence. When you get a reliever that has all three of those things working at the same time, it's lights out. Like obviously he's been.
Well, let's start with the easy answer. Until I mentioned his name today, most people probably had never heard of him. Let's just call it what it is, right?
Well, we went over this on Talking Baseball. You know, I mentioned he was facing the Yankees, and I was like, how many guys has he struck out in a row? This is before the Marlins series,
right?
And Jake's like, dude, like watch this guy pitch. Like you got to go check it out. So I did, and he was right, man. It's pretty nasty.
Okay, yeah, and also the fact that it happened not in a singular game, but over several games, probably made it a little rough for people to kind of connect some dots here. I had heard about it over the weekend, but then when he, I think it was the only game on last night at that time. I think everything else was done. Maybe there was still Seattle-Houston going on. But basically, it was one of two games that was still going at that point. And I was like, oh, yeah, I haven't had a chance to sit down and watch this guy. And then I watched the whole inning. I was like, damn, okay.
Well, it's like, when do you start paying attention? It's like a hit streak. When do you start paying attention to a consecutive strikeout streak? 6, 7, 8? I don't know.
But for this guy, it's really nice. He grew up in Southern California.
Yeah, Palm Desert.
He was a draft pick of the Cubs, but he's pitched in less than 30 games. He was a waiver claim last November, a waiver claim. So I think stories like this are phenomenal. Teams like the Padres, if they're going to stick in contention, are going to need guys who they didn't necessarily think they'd have to rely on to grow up right in front of our eyes. I think it's really cool, and it's a great story. I don't know how much more we're going to mention Jeremiah Estrada's name on this show, but it's just neat, and I think he deserves a little love.
He might be getting mentioned a lot more if he continues this, ends up like back end of the bullpen of a pretty good team. I think like stuff like this puts you, like, not that he wasn't on the Padres radar already, but when you start to have success like this, it puts you in more high leverage situations and you get talked about a little bit more. So I hope it continues. And like I said, like the stuff plays, and like me putting myself in the box against this guy, like the arm action's legit.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the hottest team in baseball.
Oh, my goodness.
I love it when I can wear my squad's hat on this show. The Cleveland Guardians, they lost their 9-game winning streak on Monday, but they got a dub last night in Colorado, thanks in part once again to Jose Ramirez, who continues to run hot. Hit his 16th homer of the year, leads all of baseball in RBIs. Now, earlier this week, he kind of quipped when somebody told him he was getting the Barry Bonds treatment in Anaheim this weekend, kind of like the walk with the bases loaded. It was the intentional, unintentional walk, or whatever it was. Somebody mentioned, hey, you're getting the Barry Bonds treatment. And he said, hey, I'm better than Barry Bonds. By the way, that was a joke. I've checked in on what happened behind the scenes. It was one of those where he's in the clubhouse and he says, I'm better than Barry Bonds, where he just shouts it out to his teammates, and somebody overheard it and was like, oh, Jose Ramirez just said he's better than Barry Bonds. And so actually the Rockies were having kind of fun with it on the broadcast, where they put up a side-by-side between the same number of games. And it actually makes you realize how good Jose Ramirez has been that same number of games.
That was good for him, I thought, too. That wasn't like a diss. I was like, oh, shit, okay.
Right. So the question is Jose Ramirez still the most underrated player in baseball, or is that over?
No, I don't think he's the most underrated player in baseball. I think he does get his flowers. I mean, MVP voting will show you that. I have a new name for him that I think works. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, please.
Most consistent, like, elite player in baseball? Like, I don't know. Like, go find somebody else that plays every single game not every single game, but like he's had full seasons every single year since he's been up, and he's consistently, mid-8s to 9s in your OPS. Like, he just does that year in and year out, and he does it on all sides of the ball. He's a base runner. Like, I think he might be the most consistent player that we're seeing right now. It's over a long period of time too. So I'm going to give him that most consistent elite player, and then I'm going to give the most underrated player to another guy. Do you want to hear who it is?
Please.
William Contreras. I don't think he gets enough love. Like for what he is actually doing at the catcher's position, I think he might be the most underrated player in baseball. So it's a nice little passing of the baton, if you will. J-Ram, who was that at one point, the most underrated player in baseball. Now I think he's getting his flowers. Again, like, the MVP voting shows that 2, 6, 4, 10 over the last 4 years. He's very consistent. So the most consistent elite player, and then William Contreras. Now, in my opinion, probably the most underrated player in baseball.
I think that's a great call on Contreras. So for J-Ram, you mentioned the MVP. 4 top 4 finishes, another 6th place. He is definitely not underrated. I would say for people that don't watch every game of his like I do, not underrated, but maybe underappreciated. Like his base running has won games for Cleveland. And this year, their run productivity and their home runs is significantly better than it has been in recent years. But his ability to jumpstart that team when there's not a lot of guys in that lineup that people know on it as everyday ball players, right? They know about Josh Naylor. They know about Stephen Kwan. We're now learning about David Fry, who has been a godsend for that franchise. But other than that, it's still a ton of young guys who are trying to establish themselves as everyday ball players and consistent major leaguers. So the amount that he has to carry this team is still pretty heavy. And you don't have to say the same thing about some of these other players, right? Aaron Judge now has Juan Soto. The Dodgers all have each other. The Atlanta Braves have an extremely deep lineup. As great as Bryce Harper is, there's some other damn good players in that lineup. He still has to do a significant portion of the load here.
Since 2016, the only year he hasn't played in like over 90-something% of his team's game is 2019. He put 129 games in that season, but he's just shows up. He's on the field every single day, putting up those numbers. I mean, to me, I think that's the most impactful part. When you have a superstar player, a player of his caliber that is in the lineup every single day, like that means something for a franchise. It puts other guys on the team on notice. Like, you better get out there and play.
And I can tell you, he has been a tremendous boost to their rookie manager, Stephen Vogt, who so far through a third of the season has pushed all the right buttons. I mean, I'm not talking out of school here when I know that Voter has told me how much his presence and his professionalism has meant to a really young team. And Cleveland's been the youngest team in baseball for the last several years. I don't know if that equation works this year, but they're certainly among them. And so obviously his presence is felt. The whole Barry Bonds thing I thought was funny. So I just want to once again get out there that he doesn't actually think he's better than Barry Bonds.
Well,
I wouldn't hate it if he did.
Naturally?
No, he's not better.
What?
What are you saying?
I'm saying there were some things helping out Barry.
Oh, I got it. If we could draw a line somewhere of demarcation of where Barry Bonds was au natural and where he wasn't. I mean, I saw Barry Bonds' entire career, and he was filthy in Pittsburgh.
No, of course.
I mean, he was ridiculous. He was fun to watch. And
we're going to talk more about that later in the show, I think.
Okay. That's a really interesting way to look at things.
Okay.
I'm with you. All right. I want to thank so much our friends over at SeatGeek for sponsoring today's show. Baseball season, as we mentioned, more than a third of the way in for some teams, and SeatGeek is hooking us up with a new special offer. Everybody, you can use your code TODAY10 for 10% off any tickets on SeatGeek, whether you're a brand new customer or a returning customer. Baseball season, since it's officially here, and you got artists like Drake and Bad Bunny on tour, you already know that SeatGeek is the best place to get tickets. So no matter how many times you've already bought tickets using that SeatGeek app before, Today 10 is going to get you 10% off that next order. So do us a favor, go grab that phone right here. Very simple. Open the SeatGeek app or download it if you haven't done that before. Add the code Today10 to your account. What in the world are you waiting for? Do it now, because this offer is only available for a limited time. Once again, the code Today10, 10% off your next order. It's to baseball games. Heck, if you want to try and go to the NBA Finals, you could do that, or the Stanley Cup Finals, or the NFL season is out. The schedule's there. College football, concerts, festivals, and oh so much more. Download that SeatGeek app today 10 for 10% off your next order, whether you're a newbie or a SeatGeek veteran. All right, we continue on. The Cubs' Ben Brown was simply awesome. 7 no-hit innings, even though he had to settle for a no decision. Cubs win it in extra innings up in Milwaukee. How about the catch by Cody Bellinger off of the blast by Willy Adames to preserve the no-hitter in the 7th? That was the time where I was like, oh, dude, this thing is really going to happen.
No, that was amazing. And Willy Adames put the bat down like, I got that. He actually knew he had a homer, which is pretty impressive because that thing just barely was going to be over. But yeah, what's the pitch count limit for Ben Brown right now? Like, were they ever going to let him go, into the 8th, into the 9th? I don't think so. Maybe 2 starts down the road. They're trying to build this guy up, right? Like, he just wasn't there yet.
Yeah, I mean, they have to
it's
look
kind of crazy.
For...
You see this arm talent, you're like, how could this guy have not been in your starting rotation the entire season? But that's just me.
Yeah, he was the first Cub since 1901 to have a stat line at the age of 24 or younger of 7 no-hit innings, no runs allowed, at least 10 strikeouts, I believe. So pretty impressive stuff. By the way, that was the guy they acquired from the Phillies for Dave Robertson at the 2022 trade deadline. So good move there by the Cubs brass. I think bigger picture, though, this offense, which has a bunch of veterans in it, really has not gotten going. First 20, 25 games, solid start. The next month, it has been MIA, although some of the guys did come through last night in extra innings up there in Milwaukee. Now, I want you to listen to the president of baseball ops, Jed Hoyer, talking about why it's so tough to do some of the decision-making process.
I think one of the hardest aspects of all of these jobs is, when, you want to be patient with guys with track records, and you want to, you know that you're going to have these struggles during certain times of the year. You want to be patient, but you can take that patience too far. At some point, you have to show some urgency there, and like trying to figure out when that timing is really difficult.
Okay, so this is a franchise that has missed the postseason in 4 of the last 5 years. Does the front office owe it to a developing pitching staff, and more importantly, Cubs fans, to maybe change up the look of this lineup?
I actually have no problem with what he said. I do believe that is the hardest part of the job, but I guess that's why you get paid the big bucks. There comes a time where you do need a shot of life into your lineup, and sometimes that happens through injury. Guys get opportunities. There's been some poor performances, like you mentioned. We saw PC up here when Cody went down. He looked okay. He looked like he needed some more bats at the major league level. I don't think he necessarily needed to get sent down, but like their outfield is, and that's kind of where they would do it if they went from within the organization. There's a guy named Brennan Davis that a lot of people talk about. There's, PCA's already done it. So that's where they would, find that. But their outfield is kind of what he's saying. Like, they had Ian Happ out there. He's got a track record. They just paid Cody Bellinger. He's going to be playing every day. Like, Tauchman hasn't been a problem out there. Like, Seiya Suzuki's like a guy that they rely on. So it's like, what do you do with those guys? It makes it very difficult. Like, I think that's the biggest problem here with this roster is, what do you do with those guys if you bring up Davis or PCA? Like, are you going to bench them? Are you going to send them down? Like, I don't know what I don't know what the answer is. Do you create space by trading some of those guys? I think it's a little bit too early for that. I would say that you do have to exercise a little bit more patience. What are they, 1 game over 500 right now? And I don't know if those guys are like the complete answer to turn around this team and make them absolute World Series contenders. I mean, it's got to suck for Cubs fans because their starting pitching has been like
unbelievable,
out of this world, and you're not reaping the benefits of that because your offense has stalled a little bit. But I don't know if there's a great solution right now within the organization. And then, like I said, like what do you do with the guys that are earning quite a bit of money? Like, you paid an outfield to go be your outfield, and we're how many games into the season. Like, when do you start to make decisions? I don't know if the time is here just yet.
I think the more I listen to Jed Hoyer, the more I realize is they're kind of stuck.
Right? What do you do?
Stuck. It's not a question of ownership not dipping into those pockets. Their payroll's over $200 million. Like, that's not little. Some teams did not spend. This team has spent. Now, whether you want to have the discussion, have they spent wisely? I will listen to that because I don't know. I look at the lineup and I'm like, okay, solid major leaguers. But then I say, can this team win multiple playoff series if it has to in the National League when you've got some behemoths in there? Like, it doesn't feel that way. Now, there's one other interesting component of this equation, and you mentioned it a little bit. There's not a lot of teams out there that have 7 of the top 97 prospects listed. So that means you can go get some different veterans if you want to. Maybe some of these guys shouldn't be full-time players.
Who do you replace in that lineup? Like, they're all kind of like
okay.
They're playing okay. They have the potential, like he mentioned, those track records there. Like, they have the potential to do better. When do you decide that when that time is? And then which one of these guys? I mean, they're all kind of doing the same type of thing. So who do you choose from this group?
Right. Okay. So let me ask you this: which one of the guys in the lineup? Take away Dansby Swanson because he's obviously not going anywhere with that 7-year deal. And Cody Bellinger, who just got extended, isn't his deal where it's just he can opt out? He can opt out after this year, right?
Yes.
Okay. So put those two off to the side because they've each won a World Series. Who else has had an enormous amount of success to the point where you're like, can't replace him?
I mean, Ian Happ's been pretty dang good over the last couple of years. 780, 790 OPS type guy. Like, that's and won some Gold Gloves. I think he's probably a guy that you want in there. Morel's shown flashes of being like a guy, but not to that extent.
Know. Right.
Yeah, look, they can make moves, but it's going to be at the expense of somebody that's in the lineup that's also pretty good. You don't know if PCA or any of these guys are going to come and be any better than an Ian Happ, right?
I really think with this question, it's just to prove that it is not as easy as I think. I've been hearing a lot of chatter from Cubs fans, and I understand the frustration from them, but I think you look at it, and it's not as simple as dropping somebody off your fantasy team. It's just not. Like, you look at it between payroll, like what you're paying some of these guys, the amount of money you'd have to eat if you move some of them, or having – there's not a lot of teams that can have a $15 million
Cubs fans don't care about that. That the money aspect doesn't come into play with fans, and I don't think it should. I don't think they should care about that. They want the best product on the field. The catcher position they can go upgrade at. How about that?
Yes.
But where do you find, like, offensive-minded catchers just don't grow on freaking trees, people?
I agree with you that it shouldn't factor into their equation, but they have to understand it. Yeah. There's a difference between wanting to accept it and understanding that is a hindrance when building a franchise.
So I did this on Talking Baseball. Hold on, before we move on from the Cubs. You have to go to the 5th. Like a Baseball Reference, they list the top 10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go down to the 5th player to get to a position player. There's 4 pitchers already. Give me a guess on who's that first position player.
I'm going to say because of his defense, Nico Horner.
PCA.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
How many games
.9 WAR. He didn't play a lot of games, but he played good defense. And they gave it to him.
I guess Nico Horner. I thought defensively.
Nico Horner is where is he at? He's way down.
Oh, Jesus.
He's 12th.
Okay. I'd like to strike my answer from the record. All right, Mets fans are saying, Cubs fans, shut up.
No kidding.
You're like 3.5 out in your division and over 500. The Mets swept in a double dip on Tuesday where they scored a total of 2 runs against the Dodgers. They're now 10 games under 500. Prior to the game, here is team president David Stearns having an interesting exchange with the media.
You saying in Philly that you believe this team has a run in it? Do you still believe that this team is capable of that?
I do believe we're capable of that.
Based on what?
Based on the talent we have in our clubhouse and the belief that group has in itself. But I also said in Philly, it doesn't matter what I think. We also have to go out and do it.
Do you think that David Stearns was being truthful, or was that just lip service because he can't say anything else?
Maybe a little bit of both, Chris. Like, I think realistically, he's saying, wow, this season looks pretty grim, and I'm going to have to make some difficult decisions coming up. But if you you could believe in that. What were the St. Louis Cardinals? I have it up here. On May 11th, they were 15-24, and the sky was falling, and everyone was underperforming. We're going to blow this whole thing up. It looks horrible. And now, only 2 weeks later, they're 26-27. The St. Louis Cardinals went on a run. The Mets can go on a run. They do have the talent to do it. But things have to get better. Lindor has to be better. Even Pete Alonso has to be better. You can't be blowing games. Like, Edwin Diaz hasn't been great for them. There's a lot of things that need to improve there, and they can. Is it realistically going to happen? I don't think so, and I don't think he realistically believes that it can happen. But does he think it can happen? Sure. I don't know.
It's Wednesday, May 29th, 2024 at 12:02 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to call it.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm going to call it. Season's dead.
Pretty early, Chris.
Season's dead.
They are 10 games under, aren't they?
It's over.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that the Cardinals could still stick around was that as great as a start Milwaukee has had to the year, it could turn quickly for them because of injuries and not enough depth. And then the teams in front of them are fine. They're not great. Go look at the behemoths in the National League East at the top. Even though you don't think the Phillies and the
first of all, okay, I understand. Like, you play your division a little bit more than other things. The schedule's been a little bit more balanced this year. The Braves just lost Acuna. I believe they're a very, very good team. I'll still call them a behemoth, if you will. But what does that matter to them? You don't think the Mets can go on a run? Like, you don't. That's never happened in the history of the Major League Baseball.
I think at best they are a distant third in that division, and I don't think a distant third in that division will be good enough to get you a wild.
Well, they asked them if they could make a run, Chris. That's all they said.
Yeah, and I don't think they can.
Okay.
I don't know if and when Kodai Senga is going to come back.
I mean, I don't really believe that either, Chris. I'm just saying, it can happen.
Here's the thing. David Stearns, and I'm not calling him a liar, but he had to not tell the truth there. Because if he comes out and says, yeah, we don't have it in us, I mean, he would be the first guy ever 2 months into a season, first executive to ever say that.
Well, didn't their owner say that, basically? Like, we had to wait till the trade deadline to blow things up. Like,
he said that on social media, and I think that he quickly deleted that, knowing that that shouldn't have been written and hit send. He knew that. So David Stearns would like to say that or would like to send that on social media. He cannot, just out of a bargaining chip power situation. He can't do it. This will be fun, actually. You can have a bunch of Mets veterans if the price is right. Pete Alonso will find a new team. JD Martinez will find a new team. There's going to be some bullpen pieces that, well, I don't know. The way their bullpen has worked, I don't know if that's going to work out. But my point is that the season is over for the New York Mets. They have to continue to do what they did last year, which was perhaps eat salary on some of these big names so they can get more highly touted prospects in return. They have to continue to do that. If they want to be the East Coast version of the Dodgers, they've got to fortify that farm system. They have to do that. I think that David Stearns will turn this thing around. It's going to happen. It's just not going to happen in 2024.
I mean, I'm with you on that, but that wasn't the question that you asked me, bro.
The question,
you asked me if
yeah.
You said, is he being truthful? I said, yeah, I said both. He doesn't really believe that, but there is a chance that this team could do it.
I don't think it is.
Okay, I still think that there is a chance. We're talking a small chance, but a chance.
There's not, and
the Cardinals just gave us the blueprint. They went and swept the Orioles, Chris.
Yeah,
like, baseball's a crazy freaking sport, man.
It totally is.
You can go on a run, and if so, say in 2 weeks, all of a sudden we're looking at a 500 club, or close to, because that's what the Cardinals just did. Around the same thing. They're 15-24, so they're 9 games under, and now they're sitting right at 500. if the Mets did that, what does that do for their perception for you? Like, does that oh, shoot, maybe they do have the guys?
So let me ask you this, my friend.
Ask me. I love this.
Do you think the Oakland A's can go on a run this year?
They have gone on a run.
No. But do you think going on a run doesn't mean having a good week? I'm sorry. I don't know.
That's exactly what it means. A run is like a 2-week run. You went on a run.
And get back in the playoff picture.
That's what being 500 would be.
So do you think the Oakland A's have that in them?
No, I don't.
Do you know how many games under 500 they are?
Less than that. Less than the Mets.
No, they're 10.
Okay.
So why in the world do you think that the Mets just
record isn't the exact indicator of what a team, the talent on a team?
I would agree with that, but I don't understand. To me, there's not much of a difference between these two teams other than payroll. There just isn't. I haven't seen
Mason Miller and Edwin Diaz's performance might be the biggest difference between these teams. Like say they don't have those blown saves, and all of a sudden they're only 5 games back.
But they do.
Or 5 games under or something. I understand that. I'm just saying.
Right. I mean the Mets record. They had a stat yesterday in SNY was talking about it. Their record when leading after 7 innings. I think it's 9 games in which they have led after 7 innings, and they're only 3-6.
Oh my gosh!
Like that is disastrous. That's
very
horrible.
Tough. Yeah, it's really bad.
Something like that. Yeah, it's brutal, and I like it when the Mets are involved. Like 2 years ago, when they had 100 wins and they had that weekend series in Atlanta, that was some of the most fun baseball for me as a guy who's not a fan of either team. So I actually root for the Mets. I want to see them do well. I'm a Francisco Lindor fan. I like what Steve Cohen has brought to the sport as an owner, all of that stuff. All I'm telling you is that it's done in 2024. It doesn't mean I'm trying to be mean or be an asshole to the Mets. It means that the way I watch them play this year means they got to do anything they can to flip these dudes, to get more young talent, and to say, screw it. We're going to try and be better next year because this ain't working.
Is there any guy that's on the team right now that you're like, this guy is going to be part of the next window? I guess we have some contracts in place, Nimmo and Lindor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are they going to be like important pieces on that next windowed core team?
Young guys? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, who's not expendable on this team right now?
Their catcher and Mark Vientos. like to me, that's it right now. Like
I don't think the Mets are going to win the World Series. I don't think the Mets are going to make the playoffs. But the question was, can they go on a run? Can this group of players go on a run? And I think the answer is yes, they can.
Okay,
but I don't know we're talking about two different things. You're talking about, can the Mets go on a run to be in the playoffs? Like that's a substantial. That's like turning their season around. That's not going on a run. If you ask me that question, can the Mets turn their season around to make the playoffs? I'd probably say no. If you ask me, can they go on a run at the end of May? I would say yeah.
They weren't asking David Stearns whether or not this team could have a good 10 days or 14 days.
Well, that changes the outlook on everything because the Cardinals now are part of the postseason picture. We're like, oh yeah, maybe they are a good team. Maybe they are that because they went on a 2-week run.
Yeah, I just
know how that goes around the trade deadline. If a team the last 10 days before the trade deadline shits the bed, for lack of a better term, they trade people. If they go on a run and they go 10-0, and all of a sudden they're 4 or 5 games over 500, they add people. Like that's what a run is to me. And these 2 weeks can change the outlook on seasons.
Wrath of Rock 832 says the Mets have blown 9 leads in the 7th or later. Thank you very much for clearing that up. That still doesn't sound great, but I do appreciate it. Hey, warmer, sunnier days are calling. So what does that mean? You have got to fuel up. And you can do that with our friends over at Factor. It's no prep, no mess meals. You're going to meet your wellness goals in time for summer so you can get that body nice and trim and feeling fine. They've got great chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart and Protein Plus and Keto. And the thing I love is that they are ready to go. You just pull them out of the freezer. You poke a couple holes in them with your fork. You put it in the microwave for 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm kind of weird that way. And voila, you have got food that smells great and tastes even better. With 35 different meal options and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, you're always going to have new flavors to explore as well. So make your day delicious, all the way from that first meal of the day with breakfast to late in the night with dessert. Stay fueled up with easy, nutritious options. I love it, particularly for the middle of the day. I've told you, I open that fridge or the freezer, and I don't see one of my Factor meals in there. I go to the pantry and I start eating crap. When Factor is full and in the fridge or in that freezer, I just feel so much better about life. So head on over to factormeals.com/baseball50. Use that code. It's baseball50. That means you're going to get half off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That is the code baseball50, factormeals.com/baseball50. 50% off the first box, 20% off your next month while the subscriptions last. All right. Very interesting story that came about yesterday. Negro League stats will now be incorporated into the MLB database. So what exactly does that mean? It means that more than 2,300 players who suited up in the Negro Leagues from 1920 through 1948 will now be a part of MLB numbers forever. So that means legendary Josh Gibson is the new leader in career batting average. It is not Ty Cobb. Gibson also overtakes Babe Ruth as the leader in career slug and OPS. What do you think of this whole move? This wasn't done overnight. This was a 3-year research project and probably even longer than that.
I mean, I think it's cool. Like what you just spoke of, the extensive research that had to be done, because there's not just like some database like, oh, let's just transfer these numbers over. Like this took a lot of work to do. Like a lot of the Negro League games were, like the records. I guess they said the 1920s they were really kept well, and after in the Great Depression they weren't really kept well. So like it took a lot of time. So one, like thank you to those people that put in all this work, because it wasn't just an overnight ordeal. The thing that I've liked about the integration of the Negro League's statistics is like, so I go to Baseball Reference. I love the history of baseball. I do. I think it's really cool. I think it's very unique. I think that we're one sport that really likes to hold on to our history. I think that's important. I go on Baseball Reference and I can like click on, they have the 6 or 7 ball players that have the pictures there. I can just click on someone. So here I just clicked on Willie Powell from Utah, Alabama, and I can start to learn about him. I didn't know he was a pitcher, 3.53 ERA, 13 WAR. Like you start to learn about these guys, and to me that's really cool. The thing also, I could go on and on about this because it's a very interesting topic to me, and it does generate a lot of feelings amongst baseball fans because we do also hold our statistics in high regard, right? Like this. I don't want to say it's a controversial thing, but it sparks a lot of feelings in people. People that love Babe Ruth, people that love Josh Gibson. Like it sparks a lot of emotion, right? It just makes me mad that we didn't have these guys playing against each other. Like that's the thing. Like what do I always say? I want the best players playing against each other. That's when our game is the best. And we didn't get that for so long because of, what our country was doing, because of segregation and all these things. That makes me really upset. And now I think I have one controversial take that I want to give. I'm going to give it out there right now. I love what these guys have done in the past. It's not their fault that they couldn't play against each other. Like clearly, right? I really hold on to the statistics when everyone is playing against each other. I love the fact that now that we have all the Japanese players are kind of coming over here now and want to be part of Major League Baseball. We're getting all the Cuban guys playing here. Like our game is such a worldly game now, and like we've kind of like kicked steroids out of the game. Like I feel like now this means so much more. Like all these statistics now, I'm like, okay, like this is the world game. This is Major League Baseball. I'm happy that everything is included now. I have such respect for all these guys and what they've done. But I just think like if you're doing something in today's game, to me it kind of like means the most, because you're playing against every single like best player in the world right now.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's necessarily a controversial take. But with the advent, as we continue to grow societally and technologically and all sorts of advancements that we get, right? There weren't guys in the 1930s looking at iPads on how to face so every generation has different advantages, disadvantages, whatever you want to say. So the game changes, and that's what makes it so much fun to be able to compare a Babe Ruth to the legendary players that we're watching play today. Like, that's the fun part of the discussion. And you said it is kind of a fire starter for discussion.
Sure.
The thing I like most about this, with the Negro League numbers now becoming a full-time part of the database, is that the stories that will get told out of it, us getting a better understanding, as much as I consider myself a quasi-historian of the sport, I'm not really. So I will be doing a deep dive on some of these guys and finding out more and more, and I think that's great, and I think that's healthy. And understanding why there were separate leagues is important. As sad as the tale might be, I think it's important to tell that and share that as well. I don't have time for people who will say, well, they weren't a part of Major League Baseball. Like, at the end of the day, like, do you really care if Ty Cobb was not a good dude? Not a good human. So, like, do you really give a shit if today he's not the career leader in batting average? You're like, I must stand for Ty Cobb. Really? Like, that's what we're going to do today? I don't know. I want to keep finding out more about Josh Gibson. And if this is the thing that kind of unlocks that for some people, cool.
Like, there's so many, like, okay, let's just go back to Major League Baseball stats and Babe Ruth. And I kind of always do hate on Babe Ruth, and I'm fine with it. He played against, 7 teams?
Yeah.
Throughout the year. Like, he faced the same pitcher over and over and over again. Do you know what that does for a hitter when you see a guy over and over and over again? It gives you the advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. And the guy's throwing 400 innings in a year. It's like, I think the people that are holding Major League Baseball to this like crazy high standards back in those days need to like really go and think about how the game was played back then. And the people that say, oh, the Negro Leagues was a lesser league than Major League Baseball. Do you really believe that? Do you really believe that?
Not buying that.
I'm not buying that either. Like, John Smith farm boy throwing his 400th inning. Like, what? Do you know what I mean? Like, you really need to think about it. I do think it's cool. You're going to hear about more stories. It keeps, the younger generation will understand the complete history of baseball.
Right.
I think it's cool. I have absolutely no problem. And like I said, I'll reiterate my controversial take. As like, I feel like if you're doing it in today's game and you're clean and everyone is playing like a world sport together, it means, to me, this is like, dude, if you're doing it now, you should get crazy recognition.
Yeah, Kate Harrington in the chat says combined stats for Mays and Aaron will be interesting. Well, that's what I'm going to finish this up with. Willie Mays actually gained 10 hits as a member of the 1948 Birmingham Black Barons. So his total is now 32-93. Minnie Minoso surpassed the 2,000 hit plateau. He got an extra 150 as a member of the New York Cubans. Satchel Paige, this surprised me. He got 28 more wins, raising his total to 125. I think people probably stopped counting for Satchel Paige. How do they only have 125 total wins? That is beyond me. Credit to all these researchers who sat down and did all this work. Major League Baseball researcher John Thorne, he was part of the 17-member committee to try and assemble all these stats. He estimated that 72% of Negro League records during that time frame from 1920 to 1948 are included, and additional research might lead to future modifications as well. So that's good. Good. Before we get out of here, it has not been a great season for the Chicago White Sox. We haven't shown a lot of highlights, but there was one dude at the game last night against the Toronto Blue Jays who I think deserves something. This guy, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know what exactly he's eating. I can't tell if that's nachos, something else. Did his boys do him a disservice by not stepping in and saying, dude, what are you doing?
I don't know if that's too many Modelo's as he's drinking one right there, or if that's a little bit of the devil's lettuce. Like, something's going on. This guy is. I mean, when you're watching the White Sox play this year, you got to entertain yourself, basically.
Yeah, I guess so.
And he's doing that. And I don't even think he's trying to like say, hey, let me do this so I'm on camera. I think he's inebriated to a point where he's just like, damn, this tasted really good. Yeah. Maybe he dropped his fork, Chris. You don't know. Don't judge this guy.
Hey, listen, I am a seafood eater.
What's he wiping his mouth with?
I'm gonna guess that's somebody's sweatshirt.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm a seafood eater. If I see it, I eat it. So I usually don't have a problem with that at the ballpark. But come on, man, have a little respect for yourself. And boys, if he is a little past the point of no return, y'all got to step in.
Let me just say this too before we end the show. If you just take a look at Josh Gibson, he looks like a hitter. I can tell a hitter when I see one, people. All right. Don't tell me this guy couldn't have done it.
Love it. All right. Fun show. We are back at it again on Thursday. Don't forget to get your factor question of the weekend. So for our one-of-a-kind producer, Dan Rourke, intern Tommy doing a bang-up job as well, and the uber-talented Trevor Plouffe. I am Chris Rose. We will see you Thursday on Baseball Today, presented to you by Factor.